Welcome back to the Marketer of the Day podcast. We are here with Kathy Sparrow. Now, Kathy Sparrow has been mentoring aspiring writers of nonfiction, fiction, and poetry for over 2 decades. And she is the co-author and project lead of Ignite Your Leadership, proven tools for leaders to energize teams, fuel momentum, and accelerate results. Kathy has so much to talk about as far as fiction, nonfiction, writing your stories, biggest mistakes, increasing your credibility as an author, so much more. Kathy, glad to be talking to you.
Well, good morning, Robert, or good day, I should say, since we never know what time zone we're on, right?
Yeah, who knows? I'm inside after the lights on. There's other time zones. Things move 24 hours a day. It's no longer 5 p.m. is when you close up shop and it's quitting time. So in today's 24-hour nonstop world, what do we need to know about publishing our book, getting our message out there, becoming a super successful author? What are we all missing?
Okay, so what we're all missing, I believe, is actually creating the business plan for our book. And that's even if which used to be called a book proposal, like for the traditional publishing world, which I come out of, if you wanted to get an agent or publisher, you had to create a book proposal. Well, that book proposal is really a literary marketing plan for your book. It's your business plan for your book because it covers your synopsis, and your author bio, which establishes your credibility. That synopsis can be used on a number of platforms such as Amazon, your website, et cetera, which describes your book. But it also has the literary marketing plan has some unique elements to it. And that's the comparable title, man, I can't talk today, comparable title section, which is where you look at your quote competition, and there are a lot of books out there. We all know that, but it's important to know who's out there writing in the genre you're writing. For a couple of reasons. One, if you're on podcast, then you can talk about those similarities and differences, but it also allows you to be able to market your book with those similarities and differences in mind. And you can also cyber stalk those authors to see how they're marketing. It's like success leaves clues, so why not see what works for them? And the other part of the literary marketing plan is the marketing plan itself. And that's where you have a brainstorm with yourself and list down all those influencers. And those influencers are the people you can call on who will send out emails and social media posts to social media for you at launch time. And it also allows you to make that list of fans and have that readily available. So when you're ready to go, you get to email them and say, hey, my book's ready. This is also a really good place to list all of your organizations, all of the groups you're involved with, because those are marketing partners. And unless we write it down, when it comes time to launch, we're going to be so busy doing everything else that we might forget some things.
And you're mentioning a few of these like uncomfortable truths that it seems like your average unsuccessful author does not want to even think about. This whole idea that you actually have to sell your book, that you have to see if someone has already blazed the trail, if there's something that's like you're not making an exact copy, but you're making something that's kind of in the same space as something some other author put out there. So that way you can see, well, is there a market for this? Are people willing to pay for something along these lines that maybe your fresh take on it? And then you also said there about how you can cyber stalk the authors of these books and see like, okay, well, first of all, like how's your book selling on Amazon? How's it ranking? How are they reviews? You see what sort of media appearances, podcast appearances, blog posts, press release, social media posts. You can kind of just play detective and see all those things that they already did for you. And it just seems like, I don't know about you, Kathy, but when you come across people that they've spent the last 10 years writing a book and they think, okay, I've written it, I'm done. I don't have to do anything else. And you say, but like, where's your plan? Don't you have to do things to get the word out there? And I've even asked these same questions that you asked the people. I said like, well, okay, here's your book and here's what it is, but is there something similar? So that way we can maybe like run advertisements or something on something similar. And they say, oh, this is completely unique. There's nothing else like it. I'm thinking like, well, you don't really give me much to work with here. So if someone out there is listening to this podcast and they say, well, what I've written is completely off the wall, crazy, there's nothing else like it, what would you say to someone to kind of maybe reel them in and get them on the right track?
I would say first, I'm not sure we have, ideas often, how can I say this? We often create books based on what we know, but those universal themes have been universal themes, right? For eons and eons. How many books on leadership are out there right now? How many books on communication are out there right now? But one of my authors of The Passionate Life, how many books on purpose and passion are out there? So it's not like we have an absolutely unique idea. We may have our own take on it, which makes it unique because we filter our writing through our own experiences. So, and if it's completely off the wall, I would have to ask, well, is there really a market for that?
Yeah, and you know what? It's reassuring too, because if you said I have to be 100% unique, I have to have something that no one's ever created before. If you find one person that's already done what you want to do, then it's tempting to say, oh, now I give up because someone's already claimed that territory. And so it's good news, like you said. How many leadership books are out there? If there's 50,000 leadership books, well, then you can be 50,001 and have your own unique take on it. And so we also mentioned this whole idea of influencers, of having your kind of support people, the people to post on their own network, their own social platform, and help get the word out. And so what types of people would those be? And why would someone do that? If it's just little me with my little book and I go to someone and say, can you hold up your book on camera and talk about it? Why would I ask someone to do that? And why would somebody do that for me?
So why I would ask somebody to do that is because it taps you into a bigger network than we often have on our own. Like I belong to a number of groups, including the Evolutionary Business Council. I'm in the Jack Canfield tribe. So I know that I can call on a number of those people to support me because we need our community, we need our tribe. And so then we're also, need to step up for them as well. Especially writers. And I mean, we live in a vacuum sometimes. I mean, I kind of fall in a different category as my own, being a writer myself, because I do network. But a lot of times, especially fiction writers, they just want to write, right? They just want to write, or poets, they just want to write and just put their book up and hope it hope it reaches the audience. But, it is a team sport. Whether writing is a solitary activity, but we really need to build a team around us to have success. And that team will include our influencers. So, and it's a give and take, give and receive, or that kind of thing. We ask favors and we return favors.
And that makes perfect sense that number one, you need to give as well as receive. And then number two, that it's really tempting and easy to fall into your own solitary space, because maybe you do need the peace and quiet, the alone time to get your writing done. But then when it's time to actually get the word out, it's time to switch gears there. And so what would be a good few first steps to finding some of these friends? Is it a matter of going on LinkedIn, joining Facebook groups? Should we be looking to find like maybe 3 or 4 friends who have upcoming books so that we can take a picture and post a review? Or like what would, or maybe all of the above, or like what would be kind of the steps towards making some of these friends so that way in the future you can then call on a favor?
Right. So I would hope that the authors I work with, I mean, they're already connected, and most of them are business people. Even those writing fiction have jobs, right? And they're already connected. They have colleagues that will possibly help them. So I would just, and also, I'm just trying to think what it's that you're probably already more connected than you realize. That's why the list is important. Like I'm a fly fisher. So that's not my profession anymore, but it used to be. But I'm connected with Project Healing Waters. So there I can call on them to help me boost that sale of my books, in part because I also am tithing to them, and also Fly Fishing International Women's Connect. Those are my hobby connections. So, and I'm tithing to them for the sale of the Whispered Teachings of Grandmother Trout. They're going to be willing to post for me because of that. So I would look at those things, where do I volunteer? What professional organizations do I belong to? Or where should I start looking to connect? Maybe I do need to get out to volunteer. Maybe I do need to join some professional organizations.
That's very interesting to think about. Yeah.
Yeah. And there are Facebook groups for other authors and LinkedIn groups too.
So there's the mix of the old and the new. And it's interesting that you mentioned the tithing, because I don't see it very often, but every now and then I'll see in some book, like the last page will say, like, every book that we sell here, we donate like all the profits, or like $1 or $2 to like a Wounded Warriors type or Habitat for Humanity type. And so is that a thing that we should be like looking into? And like, how often is that done? And how do we even like get our heads wrapped around like doing that? Because it seems like it's like a cool thing to do, to kind of like just get more buzz from the book. And sometimes you think like, well, I don't really want to keep the profits from the book anyway. I want to use it to kind of expand my reach. So I don't mind like donating this to a good cause. But how do we take more steps in this? I feel like I don't even know how to begin with this whole tithing thing, but I think it's a good idea.
So, I'm a meditator, so it came to me that that's what I should do with my novel about fly fishing. And it just makes sense. It makes my heart warm to be able to tie the percentage. I'm not giving it all away. Because the book is a business, part of my business model. But what makes you like, there's so many organizations that could use our help. And the whole idea of tithing, when it multiplies, it comes back to us too. So, and it established a marketing partnership right away, because what organization wouldn't want to help you promote your book if they're going to get a portion of the proceeds?
Right. So it makes perfect sense. And so we've been talking about some of these kind of somewhat outside the box solutions, or maybe like obvious things that people need to be doing with their book that they're not doing. And so along those lines, is there something that you're seeing out there right now that most authors, or so many authors, should be doing with their books, but people just aren't doing it? It drives you crazy. Anything come to mind?
It really goes back to creating the business plan for the book. That's where we need to start, because we can sit here and kind of shoot from the hip and just post randomly and whatnot. So I would start with that business plan and then break that plan down into strategic actions, like creating our social media post, writing those emails for our influencers. We can't expect them to do it. We have to be able to be our own marketers and write that and then hand that over to them. And the other thing that I find sad, frustrating, and these are mistakes I've made myself, right? 15 years ago, pre-internet, I had a book on the Mother of the Lagoon, Fly Fishing and the Spiritual Journey. It was traditionally published, sold out of my lodge, a fly fishing lodge on the Lower Laguna Madre, sold at trade shows. I got press. I wrote my own press release, and it was either run directly as an article, or I had, people came to interview us locally, which was in Deep South Texas. But then I abandoned it. I didn't keep it going. And because I didn't have a business plan. So I think that plan is the place to start, and then chunk it down, and don't expect to do it all at once. A little bit each week, even if it's 15 minutes a day, if you're doing something to market yourself, would be helpful. And I think what's kind of sad to me is that if we spend all this time writing a book and then just put it up on Amazon and hope for the best, it's almost a self-defeating prophecy. Like, oh, my writing stinks, nobody's buying it. Well, nobody knows it's there. There are so many books that are out. And we have to believe in ourselves enough, believe in our writing enough to brag, brag, just do a little shameless bragging about ourselves.
Well, wonderful. And you're giving me so many little ideas in my head of things I need to go back and kind of recurringly do maybe once a week to get the word out about these books. And that topic has been on my mind so much lately, of even just doing 15 minutes a day is light years ahead of letting something go by the wayside for 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. Next thing you know, so many weeks have passed and you haven't even put 1 minute into it. And even 15 minutes a day on a Friday of sending out 5 emails to get on podcasts to promote your book, or following up with 10 of your friends to see if they've bought a copy of your book, to see if they've left a review. Even just little tiny inching forward actions like that are so much more than just waiting for 6 months and saying like, oh man, maybe I'll get back to that book next month because I posted it on Amazon and I haven't made any sales yet. And I'll wait till I get a couple of sales to even take any action. Well, it needs to be backwards, or maybe it is backwards, or I don't even know how to phrase it, but it's like no one will find it on its own. And so we have to do all these things to get people to find us. And you mentioned book proposal. I don't know if it's true or not, but like 20 or 30 years ago, I knew this guy who he would spend all day contacting traditional publishers, and he would just make up book proposals and book outlines. And he would just be marketing these books that didn't yet exist. And then if he got one, then he would get his advance and he would work on the book and he would put it out and he would do all these marketing things. But it was kind of weird to think about, of that he would do all this kind of planning and work ahead of time in order to get the money and then use the money to then fulfill the plan. But then when you see it all in a big picture, you're like, oh yeah, why isn't it like that? Like like seeing it all in one makes more sense, as opposed to just writing a thing and crossing your fingers, shooting from the hip, as you say, and hoping that it works out.
Right. And I think, 20 years ago, the publishing industry looked much, much different. It was the time where you could do a spec proposal. And I mean, you had to be a good writer, and you often had to include 1 or 2 chapters, and we still do. But I think gone are the days of the big advances that'll, pay for our mortgage and whatnot as we're writing. So yeah, unfortunately or fortunately, but what that's done is it's given the self-publishing and the hybrid publishing an avenue for us to be able to step up and get our works out there that we believe in and share our messages without jumping through all those hoops. Yeah.
So we are in a different world, and there's less barriers of entry in so many facets of life, especially in book publishing. And you mentioned hybrid publishing. And so how does that factor in, and what is that? And where does your company come in as far as publishing our books the modern way?
Okay. So I'm a literary midwife, which means I help my authors write their books. I provide accountability and support, the technical and practical support, but also the kind of emotional support when we hit those walls where we think, oh my God, my writing stinks. I'm going to go clean the refrigerator rather than sit down and write. But then because of my background in traditional publishing, I help my authors find the best hybrid publishers to partner with. And it depends on the topic. And then we work together. I stay with my authors throughout the whole process. I review the interior design, help with the cover design. I don't create that, but I help them conceptualize that. And then I help them as we go along, start building that author platform, start building their visibility so that they're not at the end of their the writing process and suddenly going, oh my gosh, I don't have a website, or oh my gosh, I don't have a social media presence. So I'm work with them along, and then I connect them with people like you so that they can be interviewed and whatnot. And I believe in collaboration, co-creative collaboration, where we partner with other people in the industry so that there's a greater effect than just the two of us working together, myself and my client. So it makes it a lot more fun too. And it's a lot more successful that way. Bigger.
Right. when it's a whole group of many people all making an effort. And you mentioned there about a platform, and I think that's so important because it's easy to, like we've been saying this whole interview, to not have a plan, to just say, well, I'll make the book first, the rest will figure out. And what I think that will lead to is getting tired, is that you use up all your energy writing the book, and then you haven't been doing the maybe less urgent things along the way of setting up the website, of maybe figuring out like your list of people who will promote your book. And by the end, you're tired and you're like, I just ran a marathon. Now I have to get back up and run 2 more marathons. It doesn't sound fun at all. And what makes a lot more logical sense is what you're mentioning here of having these other things in mind, planning ahead, building the platform ahead of time, having someone else to help you. And especially you mentioned there, connecting with the right hybrid publisher, because some are different sizes, some only do fiction. And so when we're talking about you and your company helping, being the literary midwife, what sort of price range, budget are we talking, and what sort of time frame?
So I believe it takes a good year to write a book and also build that platform. I've occasionally had some people who fast tracked it, but that's usually the exception rather than the rule. We're looking at, depending on the book, between 10 and 15,000 for that. I'm about to start a group program, so that'll be coming out a little bit later this year, so that the price point will be somewhere in the $7,000 range. So, and that actually is a pretty cool model, because then we have built-in readers. It's not just me reading and giving feedback to chapters. It's a little writer's studio along the way. And yeah, so that's that. And I'm about to launch a program to help people create that literary marketing proposal. So, because often when we're kind of closed-minded with that. So I haven't priced that yet. I just started working on that this week, but I'm excited about it because I really love that part. I mean, I love helping create the message, but there's something kind of juicy about really helping someone make that plan, that they have that roadmap to follow when their book's done.
Well, fantastic. What a time to be alive, right? Oh, what were you saying?
Well, I was going to say it's even when it's done, but if someone's already got a book published, they can also back up and do that literary marketing plan. It's never too late to create that plan.
And so many of us are in that position of we've gone maybe a year ago or two, we've gone through the whole process of we put the book out. There's already a website. We've already done some marketing, and then it's maybe ran out of gas, and it could be a good time to start over from scratch and do a second edition and to do all these other things and rebuild the platform or build it bigger to get kind of the bigger results. And it's always just kind of interesting thinking about there's like the turning your hobby into a business and figuring out the rules and figuring out the way to maybe go through the struggle initially to make it better. And like the metaphor that comes to mind is you and your friends can like play kickball out in the grass and kick around and have fun for a little while. Or what if you figured out the rules and you set up 2 kickball teams and you played an actual game and you kept score? At first, it might be kind of frustrating, annoying, awkward, learning all these things. But in the end, you can have more fun for longer and feel more fulfilled than just kicking around the ball and getting bored after 10 minutes. So the kind of turning all this into a business and figuring out kind of the marketing strategies and rules. Once you get to the end point and you see like, whoa, because of this, I sold 25 times more books. That seems more interesting and exciting than just kind of playing around and going without a plan and seeing what happens. Your way sounds a lot better. So if we say, I'm convinced, I want to take the next step, get the conversation moving and figure out how I can spend this year of doing my book right, doing my book with Kathy, the literary midwife. What's the next step? What's the website?
So it is awritable.com. And it's awritable.com.
Okay, a writable.com or a writablelife.com?
Writable.life.com.
Okay, the whole thing, a writable.life.com. And so we go there, and what will we find there? What's the very first action we should do once landing on that webpage?
Contact me. Let's have a conversation. I always love having conversations with authors or aspiring aspiring authors, maybe those people who haven't even put a thought on paper yet, and thought leaders too. So who know that they've, the thought leaders in business who know they have something unique to share and want to finally get it out in the world. I think that's how we leave our legacies. Actually, we leave something for future generations by sharing our words, sharing our messages.
Right. When you're gone, what of you will really be left over? And you might have like a shirt or a jacket or something, and someone can say, that's the coat that Kathy wore. But if you've picked up Kathy's book, you could really find out what she was all about. Maybe even centuries later, you find the book in a library, and that leaves the lasting legacy. And, Kathy, you said, finally is the time. And so you out there in podcast land, you've read books, you've read articles, you've watched YouTube videos, you even come inch forward and are listening to this podcast interview. Clearly, this is a topic that you want to know about, but you can only get so much of passively getting the information. So it is time to take action now. It is time to go to awritable.life.com. Go there, click the contact button, start that conversation with Kathy. And now you can actually express what you want and tell Kathy what your goals and hopes and dreams are, instead of just listening to facts and figures, because that will only get you so far. But now to move to the next step, go to awritablelife.com, click the contact button, tell Kathy what your situation is with your book. Haven't started and failed, partway through, whatever it is, get the conversation going, awritablelife.com. We will see you there. And thanks, Kathy, for showing up.
Well, thank you, Robert. I appreciate the conversation.